regular, so happy to see you back at another program. One of the things that I get to do is work with programming for adults and for seniors. You know, I always say kids aren't the only ones that get to have fun and come to a library for something. And I'm really pleased to see such a good turnout for such an important topic. I do want to do a little bit of housekeeping. If you have phones and you would kindly put them on silent or vibrate, we'd appreciate that. If you need the restrooms, they are on this floor straight down the hall. For those who have been coming, I know that you're aware we are in the midst of a project to renovate our restrooms, and we're grateful to have gotten a Keystone grant. So thank you to the officials who helped us, and thank you to all of you who donated. They're in the midst of putting a new one downstairs. We have not had a public one on the first floor, and it will be ADA compliant and good for mobility and have an adult changing table, so we're very happy about that. And once that's all complete, they're going to move up here and renovate these, so we will already ask for your forbearance with that project as it goes along, but it's been a time coming, and we're very happy to have that going on. So just so everyone knows, the chief has asked us to live stream this. We may take some photos. They're usually the back of your head. Make sure your hair looks beautiful in the back. And I just want to make a note. I hope everyone is recovered from the power outage. And I would just like to do a particular thank you to all of the people who kind of save us in those times. And I'm sure the police were very busy, the fire, Shaler, Hampton, EMS. And I'd encourage you when you leave today, we have a display. National EMS Week is coming up. We have a display of some of their old equipment right around the corner of the hall. And I encourage you to subscribe if you haven't, because you know you don't need them until you need them, right? But I will say ours was one of the few libraries in the north that had power and internet. And I will tell you, everybody was knocking at the door. People who worked from home came in and set up their offices. People who needed to study, 4 people in that room, 4 tables in this room. One woman was taking a final, one woman had to do a Zoom meeting. We have a lot of people sitting all over the floor charging their devices. So we are very happy to be here. I think we're proud that a library can do that for your community. Sometimes you forget, again, you know, so we're happy for people to take advantage of that, and that is what we should be doing for you. So just remember that we are here for you. So I do want to mention, you know, I can go on and on about my programming. We do a newsletter that's general library news and adult and senior programming. There's a lot back there. You can also sign up for an email blast, either old-fashioned paper in the back or on our website kind of thing too. And there's just a couple of, I could go on about programs, but there are a few I want to mention. One is we have some local attorneys we work with. They will be doing their last one for the spring on, I wouldn't want to do it, Medicare and Social Security. That's May 21st. Please feel free to sign up for that one. It'll probably change between now and whenever they come talk, but they do some wonderful free legal seminars for us, so we're very appreciative of that. Anybody here from Shaler? So you're aware that we are celebrating the 125th anniversary, lots of activities. You've seen the big display downstairs, and of course the exciting event is that the township was able to secure having the wall that heals, which is the replica of the Vietnam War wall. It will be in Anderson Field, up by the high school. I'm sure the police are heavily involved in bringing it up in the parade and getting it installed. It will be over Memorial Weekend. If you aren't aware, or if you know, we've been reaching out to every veterans group that we know, every business, but you can take as many of these postcards as you like. I will get you more if you need them. But we are really trying to make sure that people are aware. It could be a once in a lifetime for someone to see that. And we're really looking for a good turnout. So we hope that you'll spread the word for that. We do have 2 programs coming up. One is family friendly to discuss the Vietnam War on Saturday. And we have another one on Sunday, which is kind of a know before you go. We have a local historian that will talk about the origins, which you might like to do before you actually go see the wall. So those are this weekend. And then the last thing I'm going to mention is for those who are looking for things to do this summer, there are 2 wonderful programs that we help co-sponsor at the library. One is the RAD Pass. You guys are familiar with the RAD Pass at all? Some of you? So your regional asset district That's part of the 1% sales tax that you pay, goes to parks and libraries and other assets in your area. And in order to pay you back for supporting that, they like to offer different programs. And one of them benefit is what's called the summer staycation. So if you log on to the RadPass site, and we can help you do that, they are free passes to things like the Carnegie Museums, the Aviary, Zoo, the FIPS, Soldiers and Sailors, you know, those types of organizations. And that is already up and running. So if you have relatives or people coming into town, you want to jump on there and grab some free passes to go do some of that. That will run all summer long. The other program we do are called the Experience Kits. Those are with the Heinz History Center. They are a wonderful partner to Shaler because one of them lives here, so he's good to us. And that is to visit historic museums and sites within an hour's drive of Pittsburgh. I literally just put it up on the website this morning before you got here, so you guys are one of the first groups. That is the brochure in the back that looks like this. There are 8 historic sites. The passes are good for 2 adults and up to 6 children under the age of 18. You reserve it for a week, come and get it from us. You can go as often as you like in that week and just bring it back so the next person who's scheduled has it. The Heinz History Center is always part of this program. It includes Meadowcroft and Fort Pitt, if you haven't done that. Quick list. The Bushy Run Battlefield, Depreciation Lands Museum, Fort Steuben, the Vickery Mansion, Duncan and Miller Glass Museum, the Gibson House, and Harmony Museum. Those are all available this year. And I literally just launched it this morning, so you guys are some of the first to know. But if you have questions about that, let me know. So on a more serious note, I'm very pleased we have a really excellent partnership with the Shaler Police. As you know, we often do the drug take-backs twice a year. They are very supportive of the library. And Chief Frank, along with Bob Cessar, had approached us to help sponsor this program because there's such an issue having to do with frauds and scams out there now. And we have lots of representatives. We'll make sure you get to know everybody. Cindy in the back with the materials is from District Attorney's Office. You guys can introduce yourselves because there's other floating around. But the rest of the afternoon will be Chief Frank and colleagues to help us stay safe.
Thank you.
I guess. Thank you.
So just as Beth said, my name is Sean Frank, Chief of Police here at Shaler Township. We really want to thank Beth and Sharon and the Shaler North Hills Library for helping us get this started. This idea for today just started when Bob Cessar, who's going to speak next, and we were at a lecture that he was doing with one of his former counterparts, talking to students at LaRoche University. Bob is an instructor out there, and I said, hey, Bob, did you know that the local town was going to have a little fraud seminar? And he said, no, I didn't know that. So we started talking, and that's how the idea was born to come today. So happy that we have this many in the crowd. This is very important. It's very prevalent. We get fraud and scam complaints at the police department daily. When I mean daily, like every day we're getting calls. We might get 2 or 3 a day. Over a month's time, we probably have more than 50. Some of those we can refer to the U.S. Attorney's Office if they meet a certain threshold. Others we have to handle locally or work with the District Attorney's Office or the PA Attorney Generals. So today what we did was we brought experts from all of those agencies, as well as an FBI agent, met some friends from PNC Bank down Shaler Plaza. They're going to be here, and hopefully at the end, if you have any questions that are bank related, those representatives can help you. So, not to take up more of your time, but Bob Cessar, he's a retired U.S. attorney, Shaler resident, avid reader, comes to the library all the time. I'm sure a lot of people in the audience recognize Bob. And then Bob will introduce the rest of our panel. Thank you.
My name is Bob Cessar. I'm a lifelong Shaler resident. I retired from the U.S. Attorney's Office after 38 years with the U.S. Department of Justice. I held every position in the office, every kind of case. I've dealt with every agency. And currently I'm teaching out of LaRoche University. The person who the chief talked about attending my lecture and being a lecturer was this person right here, Jeff Bengal. He is an amazing resource. He is the auto fraud coordinator for the U.S. Attorney's Office. Now, I don't, anybody here went to Central Catholic, but he went to Erie Cathedral Prep, so don't hold that against him. He then went on to this little school up in Boston called Harvard. And then he went on to NYU, he went on to clerk for a judge. And then we were very lucky in our office to be able to get him and hire him. He's just been a really, really excellent asset. I also saw another colleague of mine. Where's Brooke?
Here.
Brooke Reardon is here. She's an FBI agent who I've known for probably 12 years. We worked on really significant cases together, multi-million-dollar cases, health fraud cases. I led a task force. We put away 32 doctors that were legally distributing opioids. And Brooke was the lead agent. She brought everything together. And I will tell you, we're a small district. We out-indicted a lot larger districts in terms of bringing down the opioid threat. And I did an analysis, and as our prosecutions went up, the number of illegal opioid prescriptions went way down. So I think we had a impactful effect on that area. Now, I'm touting her, not mine. I mean, she's really good. So one of the last cases I did before I left the office involved an individual in the North Hills who lost, an elder gentleman, lost a lot of money, over $1 million.
Wow.
And he didn't want to tell his parents about it, or his kids about it.
Mm-hmm.
And they found out, they came to FBI came to us, and we worked it very quickly. And Jeff picked up that case when another colleague of mine left. My name is Steve Kaufman. He's done a great job. So what Jeff is going to do is, he's going to lay out what is elder fraud, what to look for, how to prevent it, how to report it. And then I'm going to come back up and we're going to talk about a case that goes to India. I went to Vietnam on this case, knew the Vietnamese National Police to help us out on this case and develop law enforcement coordination. So it's quite a significant elder fraud case. And Jeff, you ready?
Ready.
Don't let that go to your head.
Hi, everybody. I'm very flattered to get that introduction from Bob, who was my boss in the U.S. Attorney's Office, and even after his retirement is still an excellent role model for those of us who are left behind, still doing the work. So very happy to be here. As Bob mentioned, I'm an assistant U.S. attorney. Our office is the United States Attorney's Office for the Western District of Pennsylvania. Let's see. Put this in presentation mode, I think. Thank you.
You're on presenter mode, so you can't use this. You just have to use the. Keep talking.
So, Bob mentioned it, but our office is part of the Department of Justice. So, often when people think about the Department of Justice, they think about Washington, D.C. and people working in Washington, D.C. But there are, I believe, 93 U.S. Attorney's offices around the country. Ours is the one that covers Western Pennsylvania, so Pittsburgh, Johnstown, and Erie. We work with all of our federal law enforcement partners, FBI, Department of Homeland Security, United States Postal Inspection Service, IRS. I am sure I'm forgetting also work with Pennsylvania State Police, all local police departments, Pennsylvania Attorney General. Really, it's a team effort in this area, and we try to coordinate and work together as best as we can. Within our office, I'm in the Economic Crime, Cyber, and National Security section, and I'm also the Elder Justice Coordinator. So what that involves is working these fraud cases, especially fraud cases that target seniors, folks over 65, reporting, the progress that we make in the cases that we do to folks in Washington, and then also doing outreach like this, because ideally we do not have to prosecute these cases in the best case scenario. People just don't take losses, and we never have to charge anybody. So that is going to be one focus of what we talk about today. So why do fraudsters target senior citizens? The answer is really just one word: it's money. All of these scams are after money, and there is a great. Do I use this thing?
These two little arrows.
Okay.
Thank you for your issues.
There are more folks turning 65 every day, many more folks, and the perception among the people who run these scams is that people over 65 are likely to be home if they're retired and reachable, and have money that they've saved over a lifetime of working, that the fraudsters are hoping that they can get access to. There are many different ways, obviously, that the people who run these scams try to target their victims. You see them all here, but I would really say that most of the cases that I see these days, the outreach to the victim occurs over the phone or over the computer. So that's primarily where our cases come from. Here are some common ones. There are more, and they sort of feed into each other. I know I was talking to our resident FBI special agent before I came up, and she has a slightly different list of 4 than mine, but they all sort of interrelate. So the first one here is the romance scam. Some of you may have heard of the romance scam, but it typically starts when someone reaches out over the phone or over the internet to spark up some kind of relationship that can become pretty emotionally intense pretty quickly. People often feel bonded to the person who is contacting them. They're in frequent contact. They confide things. They listen to you confide things. The people who run these are typically very good at what we call social engineering, to make you really believe that this is a real person who wants a relationship with you and is somebody that you can trust. But fairly soon, they tend to introduce some kind of backstory, a problem that they have that only you can solve with your money. So I've seen instances where somebody was overseas doing some kind of charity work, and they ran into a visa or an immigration problem, and they need money to get home. I've seen cases where the idea is that this person is like an international business person of some kind, and they have a large amount of product or even gold being unfairly detained in some foreign country, and they need somebody to help them pay some kind of tax or some kind of customs duty to release that money. Sometimes the story is about an inheritance, but the unifying idea is that this person needs the victim to do something, to pay some money very quickly to help them with this problem, and the victim's the only person who can help. We've also seen these feed into cryptocurrency investment scams, where somebody that you think you have a relationship with has a can't miss investment opportunity, and usually that is a complete fiction. There's no investment. The victim is induced just to send money, and the money is gone. There may be, in those cases, a website that is created so that the victim can sign on and track what their investment is doing, and it'll look like you're looking at your 401k or something like that, and you'll see rate of return, but it is pure fiction. There's no investment. The money is just being stolen. Number 2 here is the lottery scam. So in the lottery scam, the victim is contacted and informed that they have won a multi-million-dollar sweepstakes. Sometimes there's also a vehicle involved. But before the victim can receive their winnings, they need to pay taxes or fees up front. And so the request is to send tens of thousands of dollars to a location associated with the scammer, so that purportedly you can then receive your sweepstakes. Of course, that never happens. The victim sends the money, sends more money. The explanation for why the victim needs to send money continues to change, but the sweepstakes never arrives. The tech support scam, I won't say too much about because I think that's the subject of Bob's case study, but the general idea is that somebody contacts the victim to explain that one of their accounts or their computer in general has been compromised, and steps need to be taken in order to secure your personal information or your money. So in some cases, the scammer will try to get permission to remote into your computer, or tell the victim that they need to move a huge amount of money out of a bank account into another bank account in order to keep that money safe. In reality, of course, the money is being transferred to a scammer. And then the last here is what we sometimes call a grandparent scam. So this one begins when a victim receives a phone call, usually from somebody impersonating a loved one, often a grandchild, and the caller says, hey, Grandma, I've had an accident. I was driving, I was looking at my phone, and I got in a car accident. The other driver was a pregnant woman, she's hurt, and I've been arrested for distracted driving, and I'm being held. But the good news is that I have a friend whose mom is an attorney, and she's going to represent me, so will you talk to her? Then another person gets on the phone and says, yeah, I'm the attorney. We can get your grandkid out of jail, but we have to pay the bond, and the bond is $18,000, and we need it now, and it needs to be cash. And I know that you want to do that for your grandkid, because otherwise they're going to spend the weekend in jail. So please, right away. Obviously, that's all a lie. Now, one other thing that we could have put up on the slide that can be used sort of in service of any of these scams is the government impersonation scam, where someone pretends to be an FBI agent or an IRS agent, and at some point in the scam gets in touch and says, for instance, let's take the lottery scam, I'm FBI agent so-and-so, you're delinquent in paying the taxes that you owe on your lottery winnings, and, we prosecute these to the full extent of the law, you need to pay now. So that sort of government impersonation angle can be layered on to any of these, or it can be its own scam. The advice that I would give, having worked a few of these, is to just, if you or somebody that you know receives calls like this, is just to stop and think, because the thing that unifies all of these, in my view, is that the scammer is trying to create an important decision, right? They're trying to put something out there that the victim is going to care about and want to address right away, and then introducing time pressure, saying, like, you don't have time to think about this, and you can't ask anybody. That's a common refrain in this. And many of these scams, the scammer comes up with some reason why you need to make this decision totally by yourself, right? Like, take the grandparent scam for an example. The caller might say, your grandkid's in jail, but there's a gag order on the case. And so you can't tell anybody that you've been contacted about this, or you risk upsetting the judge and violating the gag order, and that, could hurt the fictional detained grandkid. That's the way these scams work, but that's not the way that anything else that you've dealt with in your life works, right? You always have the opportunity to think about it for a second, to ask somebody, to get some advice, and if somebody's telling you that that's not true, that's a good indication that this might be a scam. There's also some really helpful things that people contacted as part of these scams can do for us as law enforcement. One is just to spread the word. If you know people who are being contacted by these kinds of things, or if you're contacted, you can tell people that that something like this is going around. But as investigators and prosecutors, we always find it helpful to have it reported somewhere. And I know that can feel a little pointless, because you might file a report and you wait for somebody to be charged, or you wait to hear something, and that doesn't happen. But even if it doesn't result in charges right now, it's information that's out there that people investigating these cases in the future can use. So information reported to local law enforcement that makes it into a police report is very helpful. And there's also something called the Internet Crime Complaint Center, which we sometimes refer to as IC3. And that's a place where people can file reports of being contacted by scammers. And that can be a resource for FBI and other federal law enforcement in trying to put together larger cases down the line. And in reporting those things, the more specificity, the better. If there's a phone number that you or your friend's been contacted by, that's good to have. A name that the scammer uses, good to have. Email addresses, very good to have. And the reason is because, let's say down the line, one of our agencies opens a case on one of these scams, and our main victim says, yeah, I was contacted from this phone number or this email address. We can search the databases available to us to see if there are other complaints about that phone number or that email address. And if we find those things, a case that, you know, was this big might become significantly larger. It might allow us to identify other people who've been targeted or other people who've been defrauded, and then let our very excellent agents look for patterns in that information and maybe identify, you know, the people who are ultimately responsible. So that kind of information is very, very helpful to us. Before, you know, Bob takes over and talks about his tech support case, I can give you a sort of general explanation about one of the cases I was involved with that I think brings a couple of these things together. So this was a grandparent scam in which an individual was contacted, told that his grandchild was in jail and needed a significant amount of money for bond. He was told to lie to his bank about why he needed the money, which is pretty common because a lot of these scammers are worried that somebody's going to go into a bank and say, I need 15 grand, and the banker's going to say, why? And the explanation that the person trying to withdraw the money provides sounds wrong, and it becomes an issue. So that's what happened in this case, that the person who had been contacted went into the bank and provided the story that he had been told to provide, and the person dealing with him at the bank said, I am not sure about this, I'm worried that you might be the victim of a scam. Local police came to the bank, cooperated with the person who had been contacted, and when somebody showed up at that person's house to pick up the money, police made an arrest. And then, following the evidence, made another arrest and another arrest, and that resulted in a charged fraud case in our district. Then those investigators were able to collect police reports locally and from other jurisdictions, other states even, and identify other locations that the same conspiracy had targeted, analyze all that, and that led to even more cases against some people who were even located outside the country. And all of that, in a very real sense, came from this individual at the bank and the person that he was dealing with at the bank realizing that something was up and making a call. So these can be difficult. I can't promise that in every case, but it really helps us to get the word out and to have people recognize the signs of something like this being underway, and then to tell somebody so that our law enforcement can do what they do. So that, I believe, is my last slide.
Well, you've got one more at the end, the money flow. Too complicated for me.
All right. I don't believe that, but I'll turn it over to Bob.
I was remiss. I met a gentleman, Phil Little, about 45 minutes ago, who works for the PA Attorney General's office, and he's in the back. And I've never worked with him, but his boss, the new Attorney General, last summer I spent 2 hours with him, talking one-to-one on things I thought he needed to do. I then was on his transition team. And so one of the issues I dealt with on his transition team was elder fraud. He has recently introduced legislation dealing with helping seniors in their banking and putting protections on the use of your bank information. So Phil's gonna come speak in a little while. Second thing I wanna talk about is we have two bank officers back here. My mother, Dolores, worked in a bank for 30 years, savings loan. Morningside in here. She knew her customers better than The customer's children knew that. I'm serious. And she knew when somebody was being defrauded. She knew when there was something is not smelling right. And I hope that the people from PNC are here, had the same relationship, had the same instincts, the same antennae to pick up on that. As Jeff said, the banker figured out what was going on, knew something wasn't missing, got the ball rolling. Okay, this is a case that Governor Steve Kaufman and I worked on, and in December 2021, we had an elderly victim come to the FBI and report that he had lost $1.28 million on a computer-enabled fraud, the computer fraud, the pop-up fraud. In October, November 2021, while browsing the internet, the victim A saw a pop-up window informing he urgently needed to call Microsoft at a given number. Number one, Microsoft, Google, they don't do that. They don't do that. So if you see that, it's verboten. You don't do anything. So he called the number and talked to several people, and he talked to a guy by the name of Alan Maxwell, who we believe worked for a bank. Remember that name because Alan Maxwell comes up later on. The victim was prompted to download and install remote desktop software, allowing scammers to view or even control his computer remotely. Maxwell told victim A the victim's money needed to be transferred to a safe wallet because his identity had been stolen and his accounts were not secure. Wallet is a term for Bitcoin. Bitcoin, when you buy it, is put in a wallet, not a physical wallet like an electronic wallet. So it had to be in a wallet because his money was not secure. He was instructed not to tell anyone about the situation because it was unsafe and could result in someone attempting to harm him, i.e. his two children. They found out, they weren't happy, and they came to the FBI. See if this is, yes, okay. So we started working this case, and it really developed two different components. The people doing the electronic fraud with a pop-up, they were at a call center in India. And India and the border between China and Burma, which is now called Myanmar, are the prime hotspots for these call centers. And they use those areas to call people around the world. And so our guy got the pop-up on the victim's computer, and he thought it was Microsoft. You know, and when the victim called the number, the lost victim was told his or her identity had been compromised and would be convinced to send their money to a particular bank account. So that's the process to lure the person into giving the money, whether it's whatever type of scheme it is. In this case, it was a pop-up fraud. But you got to get the money out of the country. You got to get the money away from law enforcement. So we had a second element, a money laundering group. A guy by the name of Phuc Tran and Ton Bui, who lived out in California. And what they would do is, you may not know this, but you know what PII is, personally identifiable information, social security number, bank information, all that stuff. It's all over the internet. You can go on the dark web and buy it cheap. So a lot of ways to get it. So these Vietnamese, Phuc Tran and Tran Bui, would get stolen PII information and open bank accounts around the country. And in this case, the victim A sent his money to an individual down in Kentucky, went into a bank account under a fraudulent name, PII, and then went out in Bitcoin to the Cayman Islands. So, I'll get to this in a second, but the way it worked is, once the money went into the bank accounts, Phuc Tran would pay the Indian call fraudsters back approximately 75% of the money. So 75% of the money they got from victim A went into the bank account, went to the Bitcoin. Phuc Tran got 25%. 25% of 1.28 million is like $300,000. That's a chunk of change. And they use that, the funds, to pay off credit card bills, mortgage payments, and for other personal expenses. So we got on this case, and we probably had a couple of the best FBI agents ever in terms of computer fraud. And they got on it, man, and they tracked it. They tracked it. We issued tons of subpoenas. And we were able to identify what was going on in India, the Vietnamese, in the United States out in California. And a Secret Service agent, I don't know how he did it, he tracked the money to a Bitcoin account in the Cayman Islands. And we went to the Department of Justice and we were able to seize it. So we got the money back. That never happens. That never happens. They were slow on the draw or stupid or something. And so we ended up indicting Futron, I can't say those names, right? Futron and Tron Bui. They both pled guilty to wire fraud and money laundering. Futron was sentenced to 9 years in jail, but before he went to jail, he kind of skipped out of town. We can't find him. It's not my fault. I mean, it's not the agent's fault, it's the U.S. Marshal's fault, because they didn't do enough to find him. But Tron Bui pled guilty and got 2 years in prison, but he cooperated. So he got a discount on his sentence for cooperating. And so, what's really interesting is that, and Jeff's going to go through a chart with all the money and all that stuff, but remember the name Adam Maxwell, or Maxwell? We were able to trace that to India. We sent the information to the Indian National Police. They arrested the guy, and he admitted he was Adam Maxwell. He's being prosecuted in India. All right? I'll jump ahead a slide, and then you can go back and finish the way it went, okay? Because you prepared that slide. So, I traveled to Vietnam 2 years ago. That's me with my Notre Dame shirt on. Did that on purpose, but, and so we went over there with a group of 8 prosecutors and 8 agents and a translator, and we went with the Vietnamese for 2 reasons. One, we wanted to train them to prevent auto fraud, and 2, we wanted them to help us. And we were successful on both ends. We had a very productive meeting. This guy right here is the #2 guy in the Vietnamese National Police. He's a major general. It was a good meeting. But the thing is, we had translators, all right? And it slows everything down. So at the end of the meeting, I went up to another guy and I said, "That was a great meeting." He said, "Yeah, it was a good meeting." He spoke English. They probably all spoke English. We had to go back and forth, translators on. It was terrible. But we also had people from the Hanoi Police and other local police forces. And it was an incredibly productive meeting. We're going to get cooperation from them. And I'll leave you with one thought. And I was really surprised about why the Vietnamese were so interested in helping us. And the senior investigator for the Hanoi Police said, "Listen, we live in multi-generational families. Grandparents, maybe great-grandparents, grandparents and children all in one house." She said, "We revere and honor our seniors, and we want to protect them." And I'd like to think that the law enforcement people in this room right here, I'm a senior now, I get the art magazine, so maybe they revere me. But that's why we do it, all right? And we will always continue to do it.
So, just wrapping up Bob's case study. I mean, this sort of shows you how complicated these can get. But this is the this is the flow of the money. So the person who is the first victim of the tech support scam pays their money into a bank account, but that bank account is in a stolen identity with somebody controlling it anonymously. Then that person passes the information necessary to access that bank account to somebody else who's able to move all of the money, use a portion of it for their own purposes, but then send back like 80%. And that sort of like circular pattern is, pretty classic money laundering, because why else do you take the time to do that other than to conceal what's happening to that money? So we like to see that sort of circular pattern. But there are victims all over here. There's the fraud victim. There's the people who are having their information used to open a bank account that is going to be employed to further this fraud scheme and launder the money. And we can only really untangle something like this by getting the information, right? By knowing what's happening to people because they're spotting it and they're reporting it. So this is our last slide. That's me. I'm with the U.S. Attorney's Office. You can call our main number. You can ask for me if you're, you or somebody that you know are making like a factual report where you or that person is a witness. I may, pretty quickly connect you with one of our agents who are way better at, asking the right follow-ups and getting the information that you want to share. But please, this is part of my job. So if there's something we can help with, feel free to call.
I think Phil Little's going to come up now and speak, and then we're going to show a video from the FBI, and then we'll be available for questions.
Were you able to get that phone number? Yeah, I can't read it. 644-3500. Thank you. It was 412. 34, 34. Thank you.
All right, well, good afternoon, everyone. So I just have to say, the last time I was in this room, I love libraries because they're just an institution of knowledge in the communities. And the very last time I was in this room, it was actually with my 3-year-old because we were doing active dance party, right? And so now I'm here in my official capacity educating the public. So it's really neat to see how libraries take form within the community. So I'm really grateful to be here. My name's Phil Little. I'm a specialist with the Pennsylvania Office of the Attorney General. And on behalf of the office and our Attorney General, Dave Sunday, thanks again for allowing me to spend a little bit of time with you talking about an incredibly important topic. Look, throughout my travels in a little bit over 11 plus years within the office, I've been to all 67 counties within the Commonwealth. And I say that for a reason because it truly didn't matter if I was in northeastern Pennsylvania out near the Wilkes-Barre-Scranton area or here in Allegheny County in southwestern PA. The issues that we see know no geographic bounds, as my counterpart from the FBI and Bob mentioned. They were mentioning different states and different countries. It's everywhere, right? Scams and fraud are everywhere. But, one of the things I often talk about with folks is when throughout my travels and doing presentations and whatnot, is that people will come up to me and say, Phil, I was watching the news this morning and I heard that if I say yes on the phone, they can take my social security number, right? How does that work? Or did you hear about this scam? Or did you hear about scam X, Y, Z, right?
And I once had someone tell me that they spend 3 hours a week trying to learn the latest and greatest scams that are out there. Well, I think that's wonderful, right? Look, there's a lot of scams that are out there. There's hundreds of them. What I tell people is this, is that rather than trying to learn every single thing, because that's all you do, the reality is this: while scams on the surface look different, sound different, and feel different, they'll follow common themes. And that's kind of what I want to talk with you today about, are those common themes. That if something is coming your way, a situation is presented to you, looking for those common themes and what the scam is, rather than focusing on the story that's being presented in that fantastical moment. Does that make sense? Great, great. So the first thing I'd like to talk about is using this acronym here for scam and how these things happen, right? You know, they happen suddenly, when we least expect it, right? You're sitting at home, watching TV, and the next thing you know, the phone rings, and on your caller ID it says it's the bank, and there's been a suspicious transaction on your account. They just need you to confirm the 3 numbers in the back of your card that they have on file before they take care of that, right? And they're making that contact. It could be through the phone, like I mentioned, or if you're like many of me, you probably got a text saying your Easy Pass is up, right? You're all shaking your heads, yes. Or your Amazon package couldn't be delivered, something like that, right? So there's a number of different ways that they are making contact with us. And one of the things I talk about in the common themes typically within the fantastical story that they're presenting to you is they want to speed things up and they want you to act now, right? Not later. Right now is when we're on the phone. This deal's only as good as long as we're here together, right? Anecdotally, I'd say is that the reason they want to speed things up is because they don't want you to slow down, ask a friend, ask a neighbor, ask a loved one, and talk it over. They want to keep you isolated in that moment to simply do what they're asking you to do. And what they're asking you to do typically, and you heard here prior to me coming up here, is that they want money or personal information from you, right? Look, that's why the scam exists. That's the goal at the end of the day, is to extract money or personal information from that potential victim, okay? So I kind of want to talk about one of the common themes here is it's emotional triggers. Scams work off of your emotions, right? Whether emotions of feeling love because of the romance scam, we kind of already talked about that, having feelings, things of that nature. It's one feeling, because emotions are a strong trigger, right? Emotions of being told that you've won the New Zealand lottery for $5 million, right? It's a real situation, a letter someone shared with me once, and they had to pay the taxes on the lottery winnings, right? We hold on that shred of hope. What if this is real? There's emotion there. Emotions of investing in a cryptocurrency scam we talked about, getting rich quick, right? These returns are amazing, right? And I'm just sharing it with you and only you, right? There's another emotion. Or, Grandma, Grandpa, can you hear me? I'm in a jam. I need your help. Don't tell Mom or Dad, though, right? You're my favorite grandma, so I can't rely on you. Pull on those heartstrings. Folks, look, emotions are a powerful, powerful driver. They work off of our emotions, hoping that once we're in an excited state, that we would do something we probably wouldn't have done had we been calm, cool, and collected. So scams work off of our emotions, right? And what they're asking us to do, you mentioned, is money. But let's kind of unpack some of the peculiar payment methods that they ask. And we've heard of them already, but I think you just can't hear enough about them and understand why they ask for them, right? So the one everyone knows about is wire transfers, right? You hear things like Western Union, things of that nature. Folks, never wire money to a stranger. Right? If you do not know who they are, do not send it, right? And I think it's important we talk about knowing someone, right? What that really means. Just because someone's calling you, just because maybe the caller ID said it was who they are, does not indicate that's exactly who they are or they're representing, right? I often use the caller ID as an example because there's things out there called spoofing devices. It used to be a physical box, now it's more software, but you can make the caller ID say whatever you want it to say. And so there's threads of believability within the fantastical stories that are being presented to the potential victim, right, that make it just believable enough where they're buying in, right? So wiring money. We all know that, never wire money to a stranger. Or peer-to-peer payments. Now these are things that you may know as Venmo, Cash App, Zelle, PayPal, things of that nature. If you don't know who you're sending to, do not engage, right? It's just like the wire transfer services. Bitcoin, right? It's funny, I was getting my groceries, I actually live here locally, and there's a Bitcoin machine in my grocery store. Did anyone see that before? A Bitcoin machine? I don't know if I'm going to invest in Bitcoin and machine while I'm going out and getting a pound of turkey, but you know, it was there. But you know, if you're unfamiliar with it, do not engage again, right? Think about it before we engage in those moments. And lastly, gift cards, right? I had a situation dealing with a grandma and grandpa scam where a gentleman shared with me that gentleman got a phone call and his grandson said, hey, look, I'm in a bind. I just went down to the bookstore. He said he was in college, you know, and I just got back down from the bookstore. The biology book that I needed for the semester's out, and they're not getting any more, right? But have no fear. I found the same biology book on Amazon, and it's only $100, Grandpa. Here's the bind that I'm in, though. I don't start my on-campus job for another week, and then it's another 2 weeks after that until I get paid, right? So I'd be 3 weeks without that book. And I don't want to go 3 weeks without that book. I could potentially fail, right? Could you front me the $100 and through an Amazon gift card and go and read the numbers off the back to me? And by the way, the class starts in 2 days, and if we order within 2 hours, it'll be here by tomorrow, which means I'll be good for the next day, right? And the gentleman said, well, that doesn't sound right. I'm not going to just read numbers off the back, right? So the name of the game here, folks, is if it doesn't sound right, and look, it's a common phrase everyone knows. If it's too good to be true, it doesn't sound good, it probably is, right? It's not something you don't want to engage in those moments, right? So be on the lookout for peculiar forms of payment, okay? So some of the tips I like to talk about is watching out for some things we need to be aware of, right? Number one, now understand this. When it comes to how they're reaching out to us, you are always in control when it deals with the phone. You are not obligated to answer the phone. I have ran into folks who told me, well, I thought it'd be rude not to answer, right? You don't have to answer. That's your personal preference, right? So watch out for that. So also when we're talking about how they're reaching out to us, if you're getting emails, right, because you'll often see phishing scams, right, things of that nature where they're trying to work off our emotions and they want you to click on something, right, takes you to another website. If it's someone you do not know, don't know who they are, right, I wouldn't click on that link. I would independently go and verify that information of who that organization's claiming to be, right? So I've seen situations where there was one where it's, again, banking impersonation scam. Someone hijacked the logo and the name of a bank, sent emails out saying there's a suspicious activity. Would you click on this link to securely put in your new password, right? And people would do that because, again, emotions, that's linked to a financial indicator of mind, right? Instead of doing that in those situations, we need to independently verify, perhaps go to their website, find a contact us number, and contact them and say, hey, is this real, right? Instead of simply just clicking. Never provide information. What I really mean by this is never provide information on an incoming inquiry, right? That's what I mean by that as an incoming phone call, an incoming text message, an incoming email, and more importantly, PII, right? As Bob mentioned, those personal identifiers. The moment someone contacts you, you simply don't know who they are, right? I talked about the caller ID being spoofed, right? And people have used that as the sole source of verification of, oh, it's the bank, then it's okay to give out that information. Not necessarily, right? Don't allow that to be the sole source of verification. So the call is coming from inside the house, as they say in the movies. Right? Yeah, I hear that often. I hear that often. Question uncommon payment methods. We talked about that, right? How many of you have ever paid for a service in Bitcoin? How many of you have ever paid for a service in gift cards? No, you give them, that's why they're called gift cards, because you give them as gifts. You don't just go out and make payments via that. Verify before you comply. regardless of the situation, it's independently verifying. I often talk about how scammers travel the path of least resistance, much like water, right? Because it's a numbers game. So for an example, ma'am, what's your name? Regina. Sorry, you sat in the front row, so you're going to be a victim for this. So if I'm a scammer, I'm going to try to call Regina that day, but she's one of 1,000 people that I'm going to call, right? And through the course of the day, it may not work on her, but I may fail out of those thousands of calls, that 1,000 calls I make, 999 times. But if I get one person to believe that I'm their grandson, I'm in some bind, wire me $500, right? I'm going to use the term work loosely here, but stick with me. How many of you would agree that $500 untaxed, because I'm not claiming the IRS, I'm a criminal, right? It's in the clear. $500 is pretty good money for a day's worth of work. I know it's weird to put yourself in the shoes of a scammer, but it makes more sense when I say time is money and giving resistance is counterproductive to their operations. Only need one. So when we're independently verifying who it is, questioning who's contacting us, not just simply giving in and allowing that powerful trigger being emotions get the best of us, we win in those situations, right? Some of the trusted sources we talk about for looking for things. Look over your monthly bills or statements, right? If there's something you don't recognize on there, question it. Contact your banking institutions. Often contact your local government offices, your local legislators, your state representatives, your state senators, and also at the federal level. Your own contacts in your phone. So I think this is important, right? What I mean by this is your friends, family, loved ones. They're your best resources. They're the ones who have your back the most, right? Something's uneasy, contact them. Work it through, right? Any local nonprofit, there's many out there that would be more than happy to help you offer assistance in situations, right? And lastly, us, right? Pennsylvania Office of the Attorney General. If you're going to report something, here's a few examples here. Some of them have already been mentioned, but we always say, hey, look, start with your local police department, right? Because that'd be Shaler here. If you don't have a local police department, which is fine here, but we often say if you don't, go to the state police. My counterpart previously just mentioned the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center, ic3.gov, as well as the Federal Trade Commission. Look, my goal is always simple when I do these things because I think it's important that when I have folks come up to me throughout my travels, they'll say, hey, I want to share with you a story about X or about Y, and they'll start talking about a scam. And I say within the first 30 seconds, because I'm listening, I'm not so much listening to the details of the story, I'm listening to those pillars of what all scams have, right, the common themes. And within 30 seconds, typically, I say, hey, look, I appreciate the story, I'm more than happy to listen to it, but I'm just going to tell you now, it's a scam, right? And they'll say, well, don't you want to hear the rest? I haven't gotten to this part. And I go, well, you just told me someone called you, was in a frantic state that was your grandson and needed you to give him $500 in Amazon gift cards, right? It could be true, I guess, but I'm going to tell you I haven't seen that before turn out to be the case, right? And I say that for a reason because I want folks to pull the emotions out of it, right? People get so emotionally invested in them and so worried about it and understand that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to work off of those emotions. And rather than that, we need to slow things down and think about what's being presented in those moments. So I just wanted to share with you some of those overarching themes when it comes to any scam that's out there to look out for if those situations happen to you. So at this point, I'm going to hand it back over to the FBI. Brooke Reardon's going to come on up, and I think she's going to share with you a video. So thanks again, folks, for allowing me to spend some time with you, and stay safe.
So while I'm getting this prepared, I'll introduce myself. My name's Brooke Reardon. I am a supervisory special agent at the FBI. I manage a squad of individuals who investigate these types of fraud schemes, in addition to healthcare fraud, which was already mentioned. I've been employed for almost 20 years, actually. I've been here for 15 years, supervisor for 5. I think there were probably a few too many cooks in the kitchen here today because anything that I was going to say, they've already covered for the most part. I do have a video that I will share with you. I want to highlight a couple of things that he mentioned just to reiterate some of the things that he just talked about. He spoke about how they prey on your emotions and how they want you to react quickly. I also want to highlight that they do prey on your emotions. They prey on your emotions of loneliness as well. And I will tell you, there are some fraudsters out there that will take time to groom you, depending on the fraud that they're involved in, especially if the amount of money that they can get out of you is a high volume. Good example of that is the romance fraud schemes. Just want to highlight those. I've been talking at these probably weekly. I was just at a women's group. I had a woman come up to me telling me that she'd been talking to someone on Facebook for over a month. This individual purported to be a military officer assigned in Yemen. And they've just been sharing information back and forth for over a month. And she's like, well, he hasn't asked me for money yet. And I was like, well, he will. And she's like, but he's been talking to me for a month. And I was like, well, I guarantee he will try and get money out of you at some point in time. I asked her to send me a picture. We looked him up on Facebook. I had my intel kind of work it up, and come to find out this individual's picture has been out there for over a decade being used in fraud schemes. And it was heartbreaking to have to email her back and explain to her that the person that she's been talking to for over a month, having this relationship with, is just a fraudster trying to take advantage of her. So I wanted to point that out. Sometimes it is a quick hit, right? Most of the times, yeah, they're trying to get money quickly. But sometimes they will take time to groom you. And then a couple of other, interesting payment methods. I want to mention gold bars. We're seeing that a lot lately right now, where individuals are being told that, yes, their financial institution, their money in their bank accounts or in their investments accounts are in jeopardy in some form or fashion in some of these scams. And in order to protect your finances, you can either, deposit that money into crypto, which we've talked about quite a bit here, but gold bars is tending to be a scheme that we're finding out here locally. Actually, we've had quite a few individuals come forward with losses in the millions, where they've taken out their money out of their investment accounts, they've bought gold bars, and they've presented that to a courier who's coming to pick it up at their house for safekeeping. Usually the courier is a representative of some government official, and we're going to protect your money. I want to throw it out there. No government official wants your money, your private money. We are not going to come and protect your bank account, your finances. That is not our job as law enforcement officers. We're not going to keep your money, put it into a safe deposit box for you. We're not going to invest it in crypto, and we're definitely not going to ask you to provide us gold bars. So just a couple of things I wanted to highlight that no one's really spoken about here. So part of my job, I obviously manage a squad that investigates cases, but also I do a lot of this outreach. I come out, I try and talk to people, educate them about these scams, how the FBI investigates, when we investigate, when we don't investigate. And we'll open it up to questions, maybe after this, where I can answer some of those directly. I won't get into that now. Part of what I've done is I've created a video. We partnered with Highmark. They do these awarenesses once a year with some group. They partnered with us in the last year and a half, and we created this video. It's out on YouTube. It's free for anyone to watch. I think that they will provide this to you in some kind of link later on after this. I recommend pushing this out to as many people as you can. It's a great overview of pretty much everything that we've discussed here. And so I'll get that started. Full screen. Wait.
I don't think I called you from jail yesterday. That did not happen.
And I was so convinced that he was right.
I won't call you back. I'm gonna kill you. I'm gonna kill your husband. I'm gonna set your house on fire.
These are old numbers. They're much larger now. This is 2022.
They have personal information of you that makes them more convincing.
You also receiving a package in about 7 to 10 days.
Oh, okay.
So if you could just confirm your card with me.
There's no part of your life now that isn't an open book for at least this scammer.
Our senior citizen population tends to be a more vulnerable victim group. They They're more trusting of individuals. They tend to have financial resources available to them. Maybe they've lost a spouse and they're looking for companionship. We see a handful of different schemes here. One is the romance fraud scheme where a criminal tries to become a partner of yours through social media or a dating website. We have tech support scams out there where an individual purports to be a tech support representative. The goal is really to get remote access to your device and to your personal identifying information that's on your computer. We have fraudsters out there that may pretend to be a loved one. They're just in immediate need of some type of financial resource.
I was out to dinner with a friend. It was on a Friday or Saturday night, and my phone rang. My grandma was calling, "Brian, how are you doing?" I was like, "Good, just out for dinner, having a good time, you know." She's like, are you okay?" And I'm kind of wondering, like, what is she talking about? And I said, "Yeah, everything's fine." And then the story kind of came out of her. She said, "You know, we got a call yesterday from the Connecticut State Police that I had been pulled over and that they had found drugs or something in my car and I had been arrested, and that in order to get me out, they needed $2,000 in the form of Apple gift cards." Oh God, please tell me you did not give somebody that you thought was the police $2,000 in Apple gift cards. So she and her friends kind of packed up in the car and bought $2,000 worth of Apple gift cards and then read off the codes on the back of the gift cards to the scammers. After we talked, she did file a report, but I don't think anything ever came of it.
What these criminals try and do is make you feel a sense of urgency, right? But it's just really important sometimes to pause, maybe ask a couple of questions, or getting off the phone with that individual and calling Brian and verifying that he indeed was in trouble could have helped. There's also lottery scams out there where individuals are contacted on the telephone or via email or even a letter in the mail indicating that they've won some type of sweepstakes. The individual then tries to get that person to pay some type of fee to get those winnings.
It was kind of late in the evening and I was just kind of bored and I thought, oh, I'll answer this call and see what it is. He began by saying that I had won some kind of a lottery and the only thing I needed to do to collect it was give them so much money in order for me to get the balance. And I gullibly believed him. And he kept calling me. He called me day after day after day. And more than once a day, he would call me 3 or 4 times. And it wasn't just a 5-minute call. It would be like an hour or 2 hours or something like that.
He was telling her things like, your family doesn't care about you. If they cared about you, they'd spend more time with you. And it had not been that long since my dad had passed and things like that. And she was lonely because I was working, my husband's working, my daughter's in school.
And he would stay on the phone with me when I would go to my bank. He'd say, keep me on the phone. Like he was afraid I was going to say something to somebody, I guess. And I would use all kinds of excuses of why I was getting all this money, lying through my teeth. The one method they have of getting money is, he said, take a magazine, go into the center of the magazine and cut it out like a picture frame. And then just stack the money in there as though it still had the pages. So that's what I did.
It sounds like in Susan's instance that, you know, he made her feel like she didn't have anyone else but him to rely on. And the more that they groom a victim, the more likely a victim is to provide sensitive information that they otherwise wouldn't provide.
I'm neighbors with my mother, like we share a driveway. She was very standoffish with us. Something odd was going on, but I didn't know exactly what. She finally did admit that she had been being scammed, and that the person who had scammed her had access to all of her personal information. That's whenever I became involved. She did cut him off at that point, however. He was very persistent in trying to get a hold of her, and his means of doing so was sending these random people to her home. They would come with him on the phone saying, hey, your son needs to talk to you, because he was trying to gain access to her again. I would intervene and I would try to talk to him on the phone. She moved away. She's not here. She passed away. and, you know, he still was relentless.
The FBI got involved, the state police got involved. Through all of their efforts, we kind of put a stop to it. I'm lucky that I got out when I did, because I would probably be living in the street now.
As law enforcement investigators, it's hard for us to prosecute our way out of these crimes. We really need to educate individuals out there, let them know that these types of frauds exist, and then what to do if they do become victimized. To protect yourselves against this type of fraud, you just want to be aware of unsolicited information. If you're getting an email with a link on there from someone that you don't know, don't click on it. Or even phone calls. If it's from a phone number you don't recognize, don't answer it.
That would be my most important thing, would be don't answer cold calls. And don't believe them if you do happen to answer it.
If you do come into contact with someone, do some research on who that person is and the information that they provide you before you act. Maybe call a loved one, someone that you trust, and ask them, does this sound right?
I would advise folks to be, skeptical, ask questions, and look into things before just divulging information or giving away money.
Maybe be aware of your parents' finances. Go in and say, hey, can I help you with your checkbook? Not to try to take control, but if I would have taken a more active role, and that's part of me that I regret, maybe I would have caught it sooner. Like, why is so much money coming out?
If you do fall victim to some of these frauds, you want to make sure that you're contacting your banking institution to put protections in place, and you can report it on our website at ic3.gov.
So you guys heard the exact same thing that Phil presented as well. I mean, we can't say these things enough. Just being aware, not answering your phone if you don't know the number, even if you do know the number, maybe let it go to your voicemail, especially if it's not a number that commonly calls you, right? Like a relative or a loved one. Be aware of those emails that are phishing. Be aware of pop-ups on your screen. Don't click on those. Don't call numbers on those. Be aware of advertisements. We all, and I do want to put it out there that we talk a lot to senior citizen population. We go out and we talk repetitively, but this is not just affecting the senior citizen population, quite honestly. This is affecting all populations out there. Everyone is a target of these scams. It's just, it affects all of us a little bit differently. If you look at the statistics that just actually came out a couple of weeks ago, age 30 to 40 is also pretty highly targeted, quite honestly. And then there's a drop in I guess reporting, so to speak, between the ages of 50 to 65, and then 65 on up, it increases again. So with that, I will I'm sorry, I don't know your first name?
Sean?
No, well, yes, Sean.
Cindy, sorry. Cindy's gonna come.
All right.
This is Cindy Carioli from the District Attorney's Office.
Yeah, I know. So, we've been sitting a long time, just speaking personally. So I'm gonna take 5 minutes and maybe fill in a couple gaps. And I love what Brooke said, and Phil about, let's try not to worry too much about the next scam, because we'll see 10 more tomorrow, right? What I want to focus on, and I'm from the District Attorney's Office, I should have introduced myself, and I work in the Elder Abuse Unit. And so we have cases that are heartbreaking, just like all of us, of people who, very smart people, who've become a victim. So, one of the things we want to do is try to prevent it in the first place. I've got great information. Before you leave, we all have information in the back. Please take that. We do fraud squad alerts, and we just did an alert on how to put a freeze on your credit. And we're suggesting everybody do it. Just like whoever said it, I think we all said it, our information's out there. Just assume it's out there. It's easy to do, it's easy to remove, if you need to remove it temporarily, but it's a nice level of protection, and there's a sheet back there exactly how to do it. It's simple to do. What about, how many of us write checks? I have information back there about how they're check washing, right? They're stealing our checks right from the mailbox. Yeah. Gel pen.
is one thing, but there's really detailed information about other things we can do. I have a skimmer back there, skimmer fraud, right? It's happening everywhere. You know, at the get-go's, at the gas stations, at your ATM machines, at the bank machines. They put this little thing on it, information about skimmer fraud, and also a really great visual of what to look for when you go to put your card in anywhere. Feel it, pull it, tug it. I have more information back there about that. We have a lot of SNAP scams, and so there's information about that. And then, you know, this romance scam, who uses Facebook? You don't have to read it. I know you use it. You look at it. Facebook scams are very similar to romance scams. If the whole grooming thing, we just need to be more careful. So my message to you is don't be overwhelmed by all the next scams that are coming. We have the power. We can do a few simple things, and we can pretty much avoid becoming the next victim. Number one, don't answer your phone. Unless it's programmed in there, just don't. Let it go to voicemail. You know, voicemail is our superpower. Our answering machines are our superpower. They protect us because the criminal can't get to us. Bottom line, if they can't communicate with you, they can't steal you. It's simple. This is not rocket science. Do a few simple things and you can stay protected. Don't trust your caller ID. We've talked about that, right? They can make it look any way they want. Look up the number. If you get a message and you're not sure if it's a scam or not, never call the number they give you. And this goes for email. This goes for the mail you get. Don't automatically contact them until you have verified the number. And be careful when you're Googling numbers. You know, the scammers have a play in that also. They have ads right there. They can move their fake information to the top. We're in a hurry. We grab the first number we see. Be careful. Take your time. This isn't hard, but be careful. If it sounds too good to be true, learn how to block. I've taught some of you, block on your cell phone is easier. Block on your landline may be a little more difficult. Do you know the code for your company to block on your, block. And you know, I have one joke. If you don't know how to block or program numbers into your phone, ask your 5-year-old granddaughter. You know, I understand about feeling like, you know, this technology is past us by. And we know we're very smart, but there's a lot we don't know. And sometimes we don't know what we don't know, which makes us more vulnerable. So you have one of the best libraries in the county right here. How lucky are you to live here? And you know, that whole idea about ask somebody, ask your kids, ask your friends if you have, call me, my number's back there, it's a direct line to the district attorney's office. Call, you know, you're here, ask Beth, they have great programs for people like us. We can learn how to put more security on our devices. Or you know, ask somebody about, does this sound right? And then you can call me. But we just want you to feel like you have the power, because you do, to kind of protect yourself until we get some more protections from our phone companies and the others. Okay, that's it. How about that? Thank you.
I just want to let you know, we're going to do a quick question and answer if people have questions. But in the back, we have Megan Ogden and Z Abet from PNC. So they're not going to come up, but if you have questions about bank-related issues, they'll be willing to answer those questions for you. And again, I want to thank everybody for coming. I'm going to have our panelists and speakers just come up. If you have some questions that we want to ask them, please do. If not, we will adjourn, and they will be in the room if you want to ask something personal. Any questions that anybody has from the group? Go ahead, sir.
Is there such a thing as people stealing your deed to your house?
Oh, I had a, yeah, actually, that has happened. And I'm sorry, I don't have the phone number with me, but if you look it up, I contacted the deed office, and they actually have a program where if you register with them, you will get immediate information if somebody tries to mess with your information, change your information, inquire about your information. So I think that's a resource. Does anybody else know what that number is? I know it's out there though.
I know that question comes up at every time.
Because I had a
every
case.
time I show up, that question comes up. It's not something that we're working, and so I have a hard time answering.
Yeah, it's a county number. The deed office. So I'd say you can kind of Google it, look it up. But I did have a case where, and this particular case, somebody was bamboozled into signing papers that she didn't understand what she was signing. And would it surprise anybody? It's a family member. It shouldn't.
A lot of what we hear also is land that's for sale that somebody tries to sell underneath somebody else. Like we've seen quite a bit of that. But those are false documents that are being created to make it appear that another person owns the land. And
I guess you're inquiring about the commercial, let's say, you can,
yeah.
I really haven't heard that much.
Well, it's a company that will stop,
Sure, yeah.
make sure that nobody can do that to you. And I don't understand.
Right.
You can do it yourself.
That's right.
You don't need a company.
Yeah.
I think that's important. So advertisements are meant to advertise, right?
Right.
Remember that when that's coming out, right? Just keep that in mind.
We see similar cases with cryptocurrency scams, right? Where you might get defrauded, and there's companies out there that say that they will trace your money for you through what's called the blockchain. I won't get into that. And you know, again, you have to be really careful. We can't say to use them or not to use them, but at the end of the day, they're not going to get your money back. That's what law enforcement has to do. You can hire a company to find your money, but we would have to do the exact same work that they just did. So you're paying for somebody to do something that may not result in anything. So.
Recently, a month or so ago, I was in my yard and a car pulled up with an elderly woman like me. And she said, "I'm here for the bird." I thought she wanted directions, and I said, "What bird?" She said, "The bird you're selling me." I said, "I don't have a bird." And then I said, "I hope you didn't send this person money." She says, "Oh, it was just a $50 gift card." So I just, you know, is that something that I should turn over to you?
You can call us. We've heard of the puppies. I haven't heard of birds yet, but puppies are always in that scam.
We see that a lot on Facebook too, where somebody will take over someone's Facebook page and say that there's like an estate sale, and they'll put all like a list of all of this stuff, and they'll ask for down payments first to secure your goods. Like I actually just saw this recently. A guy that I went to high school with, he said his uncle was selling his estate, like, and because of some emergency situation and moving out of the state. And he had some pretty nice stuff. I mean, I actually took a second glance. I'm like, man, I could handle a Jeep for $6,500. But at the end of the day, it basically said, contact me through a personal message, but I do require a deposit. I'm going out of town for the next week, and once I get back, we'll square up. So we see that
She
quite a
showed
bit.
me on her phone, she said, "Look here," she had my address. I said, "How'd you get my address?" She said, "It's right here in the email that she was communicating."
It's on Google.
Right, it's everywhere.
Do you have a question?
Yeah, I have an Amazon tablet, and I play that game when they're called Mahjong.
Mahjong.
And I play it all the time, and then all of a sudden, it'll come up and it'll say, your tablet may be compromised. And it tells you to go to a certain thing to have it fixed.
Don't do it.
I just ignore it.
All right.
Amazon and text service, and there's a setting on the do not track on the settings.
Yeah?
He told me to stop playing the game.